Leo hadn't expected the quiet to be so loud. The Austin showroom glowed under morning light. A temple of curated silence broken only by the soft clicks of designer shoes against stone floors. Clean lines, glass dividers, the scent of cedar oil and espresso. It wasn't just an office. It was a performance stage. And everyone inside knew their roles. Leo, 28, stepped into this theater with a rolled-up portfolio and a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. A scholarship kid from Waco, raised among chip tiles and discount lighting catalogs. He had clawed his way here. The firm didn't just design spaces. It curated desire, and now, he was part of it. His boss, Paul Greystone, was everything Leo had read about. 60-ish, silver hair, sharp suits, eyes like cold steel. He didn't smile. He approved. Leo had seen him for 5 minutes in the lobby on day one and hadn't since. But Vivienne Greystone was something else entirely. She was the quiet force in the background. The voice in the brand's video reels. The signature on the oldest plans. 50, maybe older, but age clung to her like perfume. Intentional. Expensive. Layered. Her hair was always pinned back like she had just stepped away from a Vogue editorial meeting. Her voice was low, textured like velvet against a cracked speaker. Most days, she watched from the far corner of the presentation room, fingers steepled under her chin, not judging, witnessing. The first time she spoke to Leo was after a Monday design sprint. He had stayed late adjusting the lighting scheme for a minimalist villa in Marfa. The others left at 7. He stayed till 10. As he packed up, she appeared at the doorway, holding her coat. "You see light like it's a living thing," she said. Leo flushed. It was just a hunch. The client wanted something ambient. Ambient is what people say when they don't understand intimacy, she replied, then left without saying goodnight. That week, he found a handwritten note clipped to his sketchpad. "Don't compromise the hallway shadows. They are the story." She had signed it with just a V. The texts began after their third meeting. At 10:45 p.m. His phone buzzed. "Can't sleep. Still thinking about your lighting concept. Mind if we talk?" He hesitated. "Of course," he typed back. "Anytime." What followed were 20 minutes of voice notes. Vivienne walking through a memory of her first Paris showroom, recalling how a misplaced chandelier had altered a marriage proposal. She asked Leo what music he listened to while drawing. She laughed, a soft, low thing that made the silence around him feel suddenly too intimate. Leo didn't tell anyone. It didn't feel wrong, not yet. It felt like mentorship, like being chosen. But it didn't stop. She began joining him during late nights. Once, he found her already in the meeting room, barefoot, sipping tea, flipping through his sketches. "You think in curves," she said. "Most men think in corners." Leo didn't know what to say. So he smiled. She didn't smile back. "That's good," she added. "You're not performing, yet." There was a tension Leo couldn't name. Not sexual, not yet, but charged. She complimented his instincts, his restraint. She said he reminded her of herself before she learned to keep her thoughts behind her teeth. He started staying later. One night, she asked him why he wanted to design. He shrugged. "Because spaces hold stories, and I never got to own any growing up. I want to shape one. Just once. That feels like home." She tilted her head. "That's the saddest reason I've ever heard. And the most honest." Another night, he asked why she stayed married to a man who seemed allergic to conversation. She looked at him for a long time before answering. "Because marriage isn't about conversation. It's about image. And I like our image." Leo laughed nervously. "Don't romanticize me, Leo," she added. "It'll make what comes next harder." He didn't know what that meant. He didn't ask. Because deep down, he liked it. The ambiguity, the pull. He was smart enough to sense danger but young enough to believe he could handle it. That he was different. That she saw him. At home, he started dreaming about textures and her voice. He redrew old layouts just to test the lighting she mentioned. He replayed her laugh in his mind. Then one night, as he opened her latest message, the thought came uninvited. I thought I was just helping her feel heard. I didn't know she was about to rewrite my silence. The shift began subtly. What started as messages about design briefs or concept boards gradually turned into something warmer. More fluid. An emoji here. A smile with a wink. A sentence without punctuation that read like a whisper. Some things feel too beautiful to be work. Leo, still unsure whether to read too much into it, started rereading them late at night. He'd hold the phone over his chest, eyes squinting at the soft glow, wondering if the ellipses she left were stylistic or invitations. Vivienne had begun sending photos of fabric swatches laid across her wrist. Captioned, "Do you think this tone flatters me?" Or a quick snapshot of an old film she was watching. "Wish you were here to discuss the lighting." He replied, carefully, measured, always just enough warmth to show appreciation, never enough to be accused of intention. And yet, in his chest, something bloomed, a feeling he tried to label as admiration, then respect, but which was slowly crawling into more dangerous territory. The night of the showroom launch. Everything tipped. The space glowed in golds and creams. Hanging installations caught the light just right. Paul had already left. A call from the overseas investors pulling him away before the toast. Vivienne stayed. As expected, she always stayed late, claiming perfection came after the applause. "Can you help me test the final dimming sequence?" she asked Leo. As the last designer zipped up her laptop and left, they stood together, just the two of them, beneath a chandelier Leo had helped customize. As the lights dimmed in cascading pulses, Vivienne stepped closer, the silence filled with the hum of hidden speakers and the scent of wood polish. "When I was your age," she began, softly, almost as if speaking to herself, "I used to believe every choice I made would lead to something solid. Something with my name on it." Then Paul happened. Leo didn't interrupt, he simply listened, the way he always had when clients shared their memories tied to a room or a texture. He has a gift, convincing people that their vision was his idea. At first, it was flattering, then it just became suffocating. She turned, the gold flecks in her eyes flickered in the dim light. "But you, Leo, you see things without owning them. That's rare." Her fingers brushed his. He flinched, not because he didn't want it, because he did. When she leaned in, her breath carried hints of lavender and gin. The kiss was slow, searching, like opening a drawer full of forgotten letters. They didn't speak as they moved down the corridor, past the gallery space and into the storage room. The motion sensor lights flickered to life, illuminating stacks of fabric rolls, tiles, slabs of marble. There, on an unused drafting table, surrounded by textures and silent witnesses of design, they undressed each other in silence. Vivienne didn't whisper sweet nothings. She didn't promise. She didn't explain. Afterward, she lay back, one arm draped over her eyes, the other trailing fingers over the carved wood beside her. "You make me feel like I'm still being watched, not archived." Leo didn't know what to say. He sat on the edge of the table, heart hammering. It wasn't lust that filled him. It was something heavier, a sensation of being tangled in a narrative he hadn't written but desperately wanted to believe he belonged in. On the drive home, he kept recalling her sighs, her silence, not passionate, not joyful, but full of something raw, unhealed. He thought about texting her. He didn't. He lay in bed, watching shadows move across his ceiling, and wondered, if it was wrong, why did her loneliness sound exactly like mine? The penthouse was tucked away on the top floor of a newly refurbished high-rise near Lady Bird Lake. Listed under a shell corporation tied to Vivienne's PR agency. It wasn't ostentatious, not by Austen standards, but it was curated, a blend of postmodern lines and mid-century tones. Filled with rare books and hand-woven rugs. Everything looked like it had a purpose. Just like her, she never called it a meeting, only a creative session, a light edit review, or a quick space feedback loop. But Leo knew, he knew when he pressed the elevator button that he wouldn't be reviewing renderings. He would find her barefoot, always, glass of white wine in hand, jazz humming low from unseen speakers. She never asked if he wanted a drink, She simply handed him one. Then she sat, legs folded under her on a suede sectional, and gestured for him to sit closer. Always closer. You're tense, she murmured once, fingers brushing his collar. Deadlines, or something more existential. He had laughed, awkwardly, but her touch stayed long after she pulled away. As the weeks passed, Leo missed a deadline for a commercial lobby project, his first since joining the firm. He blamed a vendor, then a second delay happened. On a client pitch deck he was supposed to finalize. Vivienne called the client herself, smoothed it over, then later sent him a message. We all wobble, visionaries trip more often. She gifted him a vintage Omega Seamaster the next week. It came in a satin-lined box with a note tucked inside. Every man who's going places needs to remember where he came from. Leo wore it to the office once. Paul noticed. Nice watch, the director commented. Gaze unreadable. Leo mumbled something about an uncle's estate. Vivienne had taught him that, never lie. Just redirect. One afternoon, as Leo was leaving a shoot location, a senior architect, Marla, leaned close as they packed up samples. You know Evan wore one just like that, she said, too casually, before he left for Nebraska. Restores barns now, no Wi-Fi, just lumber and regrets. Leo tried to laugh. It came out dry. He went home and searched Evan plus Vivienne plus architectural firm, but found nothing. Scrubbed, sanitized. He told himself it was coincidence. That Vivienne's fondness for young talent was professional. That maybe she saw something in him others didn't. Then he stumbled upon the folder. They were in the penthouse. Supposed to be reviewing mood boards for a new desert retreat concept. Vivienne handed him her tablet, asking him to scroll through samples. But he swiped one layer too deep. A folder titled, Youth, PR Notes. He hesitated, tapped. Inside were images, dozens, of him, not candid workplace shots, but stolen glances, him looking over samples, laughing at something she said, sipping wine in half-light. One was of him shirtless, taken during one of their post-meeting cool-downs. You keep files on me? He asked, voice low. She didn't flinch. This town eats youth, she said, taking the tablet from him. I just wanted to taste it first. Her smile was gentle, like she'd offered him poetry. That night, Leo couldn't sleep. He stared at the ceiling, realizing how few of his decisions had been his. How every step, every misspoken deadline, every glass of wine, every gift, had led him deeper into something shaped not by affection, but by narrative. He was the narrative. He had been designed into a subplot, framed within a comeback arc for a woman who once ruled PR headlines. Now she needed youth, relevance, heat, and he had given her all three. In the reflection of his bedroom mirror, the Omega shimmered, a ticking symbol of something he no longer understood. He turned it over, looked for a scratch, a mark, anything that made it his. Nothing, just silence. I was designing interiors, he whispered to the dark. But I didn't see the walls closing in. The jazz from the penthouse still echoed in his ears. Not a melody, a warning. The email came at 6:14 a.m., a time Leo typically reserved for silence. Coffee, and a short run before work. The subject line read only, status update. No greeting, no signature, just one line of body text. Your services are no longer required. It was from Paul. Leo read it 3 times, expecting some context, some elaboration, even a typo, but it was as clinical as it was conclusive. He replied once, "Is this regarding a specific project?" No answer ever came. By 9 a.m., his company login was invalid. By 10 o'clock, security had escorted him out of the building. No explanations, no accusations, just protocol, the kind reserved for someone who had become expendable. He called Vivienne, once, twice, voicemail. By lunchtime, she appeared on a live stream from the Austin Art and Interiors Expo. Standing beside Paul on a PR panel, they smiled, spoke about sustainability in luxury spaces. Their hands never touched, but the image was clear. Unity, continuity, legacy. Leo watched it on his phone in the parking lot. The next morning, he showed up at the office. Not with a plan, just with breath. He found her by the display panels near the lobby, speaking softly with a florist about seasonal stems. Vivienne. She turned slowly. Her expression was unreadable. Not cold. Not kind. Just composed. Leo, she said as if his name were part of the inventory. Can we talk? She glanced at her watch. I'm due in 5 minutes. But go ahead. He tried to find his voice. Why are you pretending none of it happened? She blinked. What exactly are you referring to? He stepped closer. Us. Vivienne tilted her head slightly, almost as if studying a misaligned vase. Leo, you're talented, you're bright, but I think you may have misread some of my gestures. I was generous, perhaps too much. You were young. It happens. It happened, he whispered, each syllable laced with disbelief. You kissed me. You said. She raised a hand. Please, let's not turn inspiration into accusation. The words knocked something loose in his chest. But worse than her dismissal was her complete detachment. As though he was a passing conversation, not a participant in anything real. He turned to leave. The receptionist, who used to greet him with warm eyes, now avoided his gaze. The young intern who once asked to shadow him now whispered to another assistant. And slowly, his name vanished from shortlist referrals. From project collaborations, meetings he'd been invited to were rescheduled indefinitely. When he inquired, he was told, "We've moved in a different direction." No scandal, no outburst, just erasure. It was then Leo realized he hadn't been a lover. He'd been a campaign, a temporary narrative arc. Vivienne hadn't broken rules. She'd reinvented herself and used him as texture. The kind that looks good in warm light and disappears when the room is redesigned. He went home that night to a studio apartment filled with sketches and unsent thank you notes. He opened one of his old notebooks, flipping past designs and lighting concepts. In the margins of a page was a quote he'd scribbled months ago. She said I gave her youth. But when I gave her my truth, she called it fantasy. It no longer felt poetic. It felt like a warning he had written to himself before he knew he'd need it. The wind carried the scent of cedar and dust. Leo wiped sweat from his brow with the back of his hand and looked at the plank of walnut wood on the table. The grain ran wild and unpredictable, but beautiful. It reminded him of something he used to say in presentations, "Imperfection invites the eye." It had been 9 months since he'd last worn a collared shirt. 9 months since he'd heard the word bespoke used unironically. 9 months since he'd stepped into a showroom and seen his designs appropriated by someone with a more established name. Now, he spent his days carving by hand, joining tables and bedframes, occasionally a chair. His tools didn't come from Italy or Scandinavia. They came from a local flea market, and he sharpened them himself. The workshop was a repurposed barn in the outskirts of Bastrop, Texas, where he shared space with 2 other craftsmen who spoke little and laughed often. They never asked what brought him here, and he never offered. In the silence of sandpaper strokes, Leo found something resembling healing. Not dramatic, not cinematic, just the slow erasure of noise. He lived in a small studio above a feed store. The ceiling creaked, the plumbing whined. But he slept. He cooked simple meals and read old architecture books he found at yard sales. No Wi-Fi, no news. One Thursday, a couple walked into the workshop holding an old design board. The woman looked around 35. Bright eyes and high expectations. "We bought this from a liquidation sale downtown," she said. "Apparently it was never used. But we loved the look of it. Could you build something around this light study?" Leo looked at the foam board. The edges were frayed, the paper yellowing slightly, but he knew the sketch. The hand-rendered light coming in from the left, the subtle fade into the fabric bench below. It was his. It had been rejected in a creative meeting 2 years ago. Paul called it too poetic. Leo ran his finger along the drawn beam of sunlight. He didn't say a word. "Do you think it's workable?" the man asked. Leo nodded slowly. "Keep the lighting exactly like this," he said. It speaks the truth better than most words. They thanked him and left. He stood in the doorway for a while, the board still in hand. That evening, he opened his notebook, not a laptop. Just a stitched book with specks of sawdust in the creases. He wrote a letter he would never send. Vivienne, there was a time I thought visibility was the same as intimacy. That to be seen was to be loved. Thank you for correcting me. I don't hate you. You taught me how silence sounds when it comes from someone who once made you feel visible. I don't miss the city. I don't miss the spotlight. But sometimes I miss the way you watched me when I explained a design. Like it mattered. Like I mattered. I know now, that wasn't love. It was hunger. Yours for time, mine for worth. And hunger makes everything taste like truth, until the ache stops. I'm building things that no one will post about. Things that creak, things that last. Be well, L. He tore out the page and slid it into the fire pit beside his workbench. The flame took its time, curling the edge slowly before swallowing the ink. He didn't watch it burn. He turned away and sanded a corner until it softened beneath his touch. Maybe that was the only real design he needed to finish. She wanted to feel young. He wanted to feel real. Maybe that's why they never lasted.